What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, the PlayStation 5 Pro was officially revealed. And while some of the technology in it does look kind of interesting, things didn't go over so well for Sony when they revealed the price point and kind of lack of different features for the system. We'll go over all of that, though, here today. Also, we are going to be talking about several Switch SKUs and bundles that have just leaked ahead of time, and it seems like the announcement could be happening any day now. Then we also have a patch for Star Wars Outlaws that actually works to fix one of the more annoying parts of the game. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with the Crew 2 and Crew Motorfest. Now we know that the original Crew went offline and it was a whole thing because, well, you just lose your access to your own purchase then, and you look at the game and go, okay, this seems like something you could have an offline mode for, and in fact, Ubisoft was pressed quite heavily, but not only the gaming community, but even legislators, it seemed. Well, now it looks like they're changing their tune for some of their other Crew titles. This we can see over on VGC, where they say Ubisoft has announced plans to launch offline modes for the Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest. This from the senior creative director of the franchise saying, quote, "We want to acknowledge that some of you voiced concern about the access to the Crew games. Today, we want to express our commitment to the future of the Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest. We are currently exploring different solutions and can confirm an offline mode to ensure long-term access to both titles." I mean, if you played like the Crew Motorfest, it seems like you should be able to play that game without that required online connection. I know the idea is to have a big multiplayer style racing game, but still, when servers go offline, there should be a way for you to still access your $70 purchase, right? Even 10 years from now. And yes, it took some pushing to get them to at least make that effort, but hopefully this is something they continue to pursue going forward rather than leave everything up to if that server is still alive or not. Also, it looks like Sony is gonna start stocking refurbished PlayStation 5 systems. This over on their official website. Their PlayStation Direct store. We have the certified refurbished PlayStation 5 and then the PlayStation 5 digital. It's coming in at the price $349 for the discless version and then $399 for the disc version, which that's $100 off. That is actually pretty good. And the thing with refurbished systems from the manufacturer themselves, you get a warranty with it and they tend to be the higher quality, we'll say, refurbished units. I've seen some wild things from retail stores or places like Amazon, so this would probably be the place to roll the dice on. And since we're going to be talking about high-priced items soon, kind of makes sense why Sony is making a push even for the lower end here with the PlayStation 5 that, yes, we'll technically still play all the same games that Pro model will, just not at times 8K. Oh, and with Concord going offline, people actually noticed something with their digital copy. It was being removed from their account. Here, for example, is a screen that was shared by the gamer, and I saw many people who had review copies of the game because, well, you didn't really see a lot of people who were sharing their purchase of the game. Go figure with some of those sales numbers. But this screen, for example, shows that Concord is not playable, and as a result, we have removed this content from your account. So they're not only just shutting down servers, they're actually going and just taking it out of people's library, trying to just erase this thing from existence completely. And we saw this before. Do you remember that demo got out there a bit early for Stellar Blade, and then they pulled it back out of people's accounts? Well, here it is again. By the way, this is continuing to remind people that you actually don't have that much control necessarily over your purchases in the digital era, which is something these manufacturers and these big publishers are trying to push us towards, so they themselves have the control to be able to do something like this if maybe a game, well, just has a disastrous launch like we saw with Concord. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 5 Pro that absolutely took over the internet discourse yesterday. I mean, it was just mayhem online, and a lot of that has to do with the price that Sony flashed at the end of the video. But not just in places like the US, other places, the price was even higher than what was shown on screen, which we'll be coming back around to that, but let's start at the top here, as Mark Cerny was hosting this video, narrating a lot of it, and it was about 9 minutes long, with the first couple of minutes just talking about the current PS5 and some of the functionality they are able to introduce with things like that SSD and the GPU. Well, from there, he talked about the big three, as he called them, starting with an upgraded GPU. It said it has 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console, 28% faster memory, and this enables up to 45% rendering for gameplay, making the experience, they say, much smoother. They then have advanced ray tracing, which is a big thing that they were trying to market with the current PS5, but if you play a game with ray tracing, you know you're going to be playing with a lower frame rate than most likely you would like to. But they say that this is able to cast at double and even triple the speeds of the current PS5. And then the third pillar here is AI-driven upscaling. This is marketed a term from them, PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PSSR, or PISR? Okay, an AI-driven upscaling, that a technique that uses a machine learning-based technology to provide super sharp image clarity by adding an extraordinary amount of detail. So think about it like compared to something like DLSS, for example, from NVIDIA. And really what they were trying to convey here is that they want to eliminate the need to choose between performance or fidelity mode. Basically, the PS5 Pro will play things in fidelity mode with ray tracing closer to that 60 frames per second mark that we see in performance mode. The only issue is they then showed it in performance mode, and this just, it did not do the PS5 Pro footage any favors, because you're on stream and it just looked exactly the same. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it's on a crushed YouTube stream that just, it did not come through well. All right. Anyway, a few things that weren't necessarily mentioned up front. It has 2 terabytes of storage. So there is at least a pretty big benefit there, going from 825 gigabytes up to 2 terabytes here. The disk drive and the vertical stand are sold separately. Hysterically, they told us that about the vertical stand, but they were kind of quiet about this, not including that $80 disk drive, and then they flashed up the price point of $699.99. Yeah, that's, that was some sticker shock. November 7th release pre-orders will go live September 26th. It is important to note that even though the US $700 and we're really focusing on that price point, many other regions, it's actually quite a bit more expensive. In fact, in some parts of Europe, if you tack on that $80 disk drive, you're approaching $1,000. That sounds absolutely wild, but that's just how it is right now with exchange rates and values of currency across the world. This certainly landing in that enthusiast territory for pricing. But if we take a look at the console itself, it is slightly smaller than the first console version for the PlayStation 5, which was a behemoth. So the fact they have at least been able to get the performance up to this level, then the size down a bit, that's something. And I will say that the system, while I was hoping it would look a bit crazier, I guess, it still falls in line with the standard PlayStation 5 look, with those 3 black stripes on either side. Kind of looks like a heatsink almost protruding through the shell. Now, you apparently will still be able to use the same covers and that same disk drive if you already have one, say for a PlayStation 5 newer slim model. You'll just be able to, I guess, remove it from there, pair it to the PS5 Pro, and then you're good to go using discs. Some of the other enhancements include PlayStation 5 Pro Game Boost. This can apply to more than 8,500 backwards compatible PS4 games playable on the PS5 Pro. We had a boost mode kind of already with the PS5 for older titles, but it seems like this would incorporate some of the AI upscaling stuff they have here with PSSR. And the big move here for Sony would be to have Bloodborne be 60 FPS only on the PlayStation 5 Pro. If you don't think the internet's mad enough yet, that would be something to make that tweet. But the PS5 Pro will also launch with the latest wireless technology, Wi-Fi 7, territories supporting the standard, and then of course VRR, but also 8K gaming. So I saw this and I said, really, they're gonna do 8K? Well, according to CNET, who actually had some hands-on time at least playing what looked like a pre-production console, because they showed the back of it and it was just outright missing ports. There's just kind of like an empty shell at certain parts. But Gran Turismo 7 has a mode that does 4K with ray tracing, but then also a mode that's just 8K. So yes, we will have our first true 8K game. even though we had 8K on the box when the PS5 launched, but they took it off, so everyone forgot about that. But we will have 8K just with the $700 system. Anyway, some other games that will have PlayStation 5 Pro enhancements include Alan Wake 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Demon's Souls, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I would say definitely needs it after seeing that performance mode live for 100+ hours. Yeah, it'd be good to have that not be blurry with the Vaseline effect. Hogwarts Legacy, Horizon Forbidden West, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, The Crew Motorfest, The First Ascendant, Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and then more. Now, unfortunately, CNET was not allowed to capture direct footage from the PS5 with a capture card. In fact, they mentioned they weren't even able to focus in on the screen that much at all. They had to kind of do it from the side or just quick glimpses here and there with panning shots. So does seem like Sony is being very cagey, or at least careful, I guess, with what's being recorded here with the image quality, because it's just hard to show this stuff online. It is. You have to see it in person, I guess, to get that effect. And even then, the vast majority of gamers probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. There were some online yesterday who were trolling each other, showing them a screenshot that they said looked incredible. It's for the PS5 Pro. And people were like, oh, it does look good. Like, yeah, this is a screenshot from the current PS5, guys. Anyway, the video right now that revealed the PlayStation 5 Pro is getting absolutely crushed with dislikes, over 98,000 of them now. And a lot of this does come down to that price point versus what the upgrades that they are presenting here, which doesn't really seem that necessary. I will say, of course, there are people out there who look at this and go, oh, good, I'll just have better frame rate. And I am glad they talked about that more, because it does seem like many people are waking up to the 30 versus 60 frames per second thing as more people actually choose performance mode, which is the right choice. Good job, everyone. But it's now to the point where Sony is saying, hey, we're going to have these PS5 games that we kind of already talked about 120 frames. We talked about 4K. Now it's at least going to get the 4K with ray tracing at 60 FPS, which is a lot of stuff that they originally marketed for the PlayStation 5. And it's just now going to cost $700 and technically $780 if you need that disk drive attached to it. So I absolutely understand the backlash here, but really at this time, it's like, all right, well, I don't necessarily need it then. And I will tell you this, if I wasn't doing this like full time and really working with gaming and checking out technology and doing teardowns for this stuff, I probably would pass on this too. I'd say, you know what, the PS5 is good enough. $700, is it that necessary? No. And then that would kind of be it, right? I would be like, hey, you know what? I'll check out the PlayStation 6. I'll start saving for that now instead of spending money on the PlayStation 5 Pro, because another takeaway I had here was, okay, if the PS5 Pro is $700, how much is that PlayStation 6 going to cost? Because previously with mid-gen refreshes, they kind of gave us an indication as to the direction for price points. The Xbox One X was $500. Well, then the Xbox Series X was $500. The PS4 Pro was $400. Technically, the PS5 without a disk drive is $400, but if you want a disk drive, it's $500. You kind of see what I'm getting at here. I feel like in 4 years, we might be looking at a PlayStation 6 that is right around the $700 mark, and that is going to be something when that happens. Next up, let's talk about a bunch of Nintendo Switch SKUs and bundles that have just leaked online, and it appears they are being prepared to have the announcements made actually any day now. This was shared by D Labs, who's pretty much been on it constantly when it comes to these retail leaks and listings, and they're able to piece things together as time goes along, and in fact, that's what's happened here. They have some of the pieces to the puzzle, but I figured it was worth bringing to your attention just in case you were still going to be buying a Switch sometime this holiday season, not necessarily even for you, but maybe as a gift. You might as well get as much as you can for the money you're putting out, right? Well, we can see this is over on D Labs, where they have listed 5 different bundles and SKUs that are currently set to be announced here pretty soon. In fact, they say these will be announced between September 12th and September 13th. So before the end of this week, we should know what all of these are. Okay, so at the top, we have 2 different Switch Lite systems. The content's unknown. And remember, we've seen things like Animal Crossing just pop up out of nowhere. So it could be something where they go back and get that again, or they go back, get an older franchise, pair it with some Switch Lite systems, and they're able to move them a bit more than if it was just a regular system that's not themed. We also have the Nintendo Switch Sports Pack. That includes the Nintendo Switch console, neon blue, neon red color for the Joy-Cons, and the pre-installed Nintendo Switch Sports game, plus 12 months of Nintendo Switch Online subscription. That appears to be the standard Nintendo Switch system because it comes in at $300. And then the Nintendo Switch OLED model, so there's two of those. One is the system we already talked about with Super Mario Bros. Wonder and 3 months of subscription for NSO. Again, that seems like a really good bundle if you're looking around for a Switch and setting up maybe for the holiday season as a gift. Mario Wonder is an awesome title that is pretty much set up for all ages and is, I think, a great way to start off your journey into what is an incredibly deep catalog of games for the Switch. And then the other one is just a Switch OLED model with contents unknown for now. The point is, there appears to be a number of different bundles and SKUs that Nintendo is preparing for this holiday season, which makes sense for a number of reasons. One, they probably do have Switch stock that they will try to move through here with the holidays, this most likely being the final holiday that it'll be focused on this as the main platform. And two, they do have a pretty lofty goal still of 13.5 million systems to hit for this fiscal year. And what better way to do it than to start pairing games and doing themed systems for collectors? I mean, that's where we are. They understand they've sold the Switch many, many times to really sometimes the same person. So what's one more Switch Lite for the collection, I guess? But really, keep an eye out here. Any day now, we should see a bunch of announcements from Nintendo. Not necessarily the hardware that people were hoping for with a Switch 2, but this just continues to bolster a holiday lineup and maybe get some of this stuff out of the way for them to start actually talking about the hardware we really want to hear about, hopefully in the next month or so. I'm still thinking October, but I guess it wouldn't shock me if they wanted to get something out there ahead of Tokyo Game Show. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws, which had a bit of a controversial reception, we'll say. Technically a controversial build-up as well. But the game is out, and it's notably buggy for a lot of people. They have been pushing patch after patch after patch, seemingly for different systems. In some cases, erasing save data if you had an early access for the PlayStation 5, which is still wild to me. But they are at least listening to feedback and some of the reception, and in this case, they're working to iron out what is an incredibly annoying part of the game when it comes to the stealth sections. This, though, we can see over on Ubisoft's website, detailing some of the patch notes. And that starts at the top with tweaks and improvement on some challenging stealth moments. So, if you've played the game, there are times where if you get caught, it just ends. Like there's a game over screen basically. And I'm not really sure what exactly the tweaks would be here because they said they don't want to get rid of them outright. If you get caught at times, they just want it to end and you've got to go back to a checkpoint. I'm almost wondering if maybe there are certain sections where an enemy will think twice about ringing that game over screen. That's kind of what I feel like maybe is happening here. But if it can work to alleviate that even a little bit, it will at least just make those sections better. Cross progression and saving is now available. Overall PC performance improvement optimization, crash fixes, and stability improvements across all platforms. Old School Cool Trophy can now be unlocked for PlayStation 5 players, so you can finally platinum the game. That's right. We had to wait for a patch to platinum the thing. Great. The hyperspace mission is fixed. You can now take off. That seems kind of important. And the various bug fixes affecting quest flow. They have all the different file sizes here for patches across platforms. And I guess the cross progression, that is a nice feature with Ubisoft where it will link to your Ubisoft account. And then you can go between Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. So if you have the game multiple times, you can jump between all these different consoles. And maybe that's better if you have like the Ubisoft subscription that this would go into, and then it's like, okay, I subscribe to the service and then my save file can go between all these different platforms depending on what I have available to me at that time. But I am grinding through the game very slowly. It's not really that enticing to me anymore. The first little bit of it was a couple of hours, like, okay, I see Star Wars, I get it. And then it's just kind of slogged on now, and I'm like, I'm not as excited to really play it. So I will get to eventually finishing it, but it is that situation of every few days I play an hour or so, and this might be a game that I'm in for the long haul simply because of that. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you buying a PS5 Pro? Okay, 92% just say no, 8% say yes, and I figured it was going to end up being less than what we believe the PS4 Pro to be, that being about 1 in 5, it's about 20%. This is tracking closer, I think, to 1 out of 10. And look, I think the PS5 Pro, when it goes up for pre-orders, that'd be September 26th, it's going to sell out right away. I don't think there are any issues moving the initial batch of PS5 Pro consoles. Of course, we also have the holiday season coming up. Everything's sort of playing into that first wave being sold through. My question is, the longer run, like a year and a half, 2 years from now, will there just be PS5 Pros that are just out there on store shelves or just in stock without any issues, and it's because they are just not selling as opposed to them just having a nice amount of systems ready to go? And that's the big question, that the tail in terms of sales performance. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Loom Doom. It says, the fall of Ubisoft has definitely been a sight to see. It goes to show that chasing trends can only take you so far. I will tell you this, if you go back in time, like 22 years, 21 years, 23 years. You go back in time that far, and you see the first Splinter Cell being shown, and then you hear about like Rainbow Six, and you're seeing Ghost Recon, and man, there was a point in time where Ubisoft, I mean, they were just hit after hit after hit. It was super impressive, some of the stuff they were showing off. It was really innovative. It felt like they were more of a gaming company at that time, where it just doesn't really feel like that anymore. It does feel very formulaic, very cookie cutter. Doesn't feel like they have that same kind of innovative drive that they had back then. And that's something I'd like to see them get back to. And maybe the answer really is for them to not care so much about their shareholders. And yeah, maybe that also means that Tencent becomes more involved and they would go private. You're giving up a lot there either way, with Tencent coming in or them continuing on to answer to shareholders. But something certainly has to change at Ubisoft, unless they eventually want to decline and just go away completely. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I've linked up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear about some of my concerns around console gaming and how it's looking a bit sketchy for the future, especially around pricing. I'll leave that link down below to the second channel. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.